What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Depression Vacation podcast. I'm here with your co-host, and I haven't introduced anybody because
there's no one really to introduce.
Well,
did you forget my name? Is this why you're struggling on this?
No, I don't do a good job of introducing the podcast. You do a better job of it.
I disagree with that wholeheartedly.
Oh. Well, I'm Shannon.
I'm Hal.
And here we are again. We got a little bit of flack because we didn't have an episode last week. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
There
were a lot of things last week. I didn't tell you exactly why I had to end up missing a session. So when I was backing into my driveway like a week and a half ago, this was like 11 o'clock at night, and I was just getting home from work, and there was a maniac like going like 60 or 70 miles an hour down my road. He was swerving all over the place. I was pretty sure he was drunk and speeding, and I was in a very exposed place, so I just panicked, backed up as quickly as possible, and I thought I just hit the curb on my way up, and I was like, whew, that could have been worse. And then like 3 days later, my neighbor took a picture of a tree that's kind of by my driveway, and she was like, hey, do you know what happened with this? And I was like, it might have been me because I hit the curb trying to avoid a speeding car. So I helped them. Like, the tree didn't get it just kind of got knocked down. So we replanted it, rerouted it.
Aww.
And the great irony of the situation is I don't think it was me who actually took the tree down. And her husband was saying the same thing. Like, as we were spending a couple of hours trying to rewrite this tree, he notices, your car doesn't have any damage, and the bark here is pretty fucked up. And also, my mom took a look at the tree, and the bark was split, all the way up.
Oh.
And she's like, there's no way that a truck didn't hit this. And I'm like, at least I learned how to straighten a tree.
Yay. Well, that's nice that you got together with your neighbors and got it fixed up. That's nice.
Yeah. I figure in a situation like that, it's better to take responsibility for something you might have done.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just Hal, like we talked about before, being convinced to take responsibility for things he didn't do.
Well, it's okay.
Yeah.
Everything is fine. So, yeah. Well, I'll tell you first about today, because today was kind of fun.
Ooh.
So I was at the March for Babies, which is done through a March of Dimes. It's we did a volunteer-led walk today that was to raise awareness and money for mothers and babies. I can't think of the whole spiel off the top of my head, but even though we are a very well-developed nation, we still have issues with being able to give mothers the best pregnancy experience possible.
Oh my God! Yeah, the maternity death rate in this country is it's somewhere dead last among developed countries.
Yeah.
Which is another thing that gets lost a lot in the abortion debate. Is how this country actually treats its pregnant people. So
yeah. So with it being Mother's Day weekend, the walk was very timely, and I'm part of the women's group for my work. I'm actually the regional co-chair for the women's business resource group.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so my co-chair and I, we were part sponsor of this event. We set up a tent. We had everybody hanging out. Everybody was having a great old time. And it was rainy, but it was a really great turnout, and I think it went really well.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that you did some good, meaningful stuff with your Saturday morning.
Yeah. And so I'm there at the tent, and another one of my coworkers were hanging out, and she gets a call from another one of our coworkers, and she's just like, hey, I was trying to park, but I've found this dog.
Found this dog.
And it doesn't have any kind of ID, doesn't have a leash or anything. And we were like, oh no. So I went up, I got the dog, and one of the volunteers for the event gave me some rope. And I was like, okay, well, it actually turned out to be a he. He'll hang out with us through the rest of the event. And then, I can take him to somewhere to see if he's chipped. But one of my co-chair got on Find Toby, and there was a recent post, and it was this dog.
Aww.
And so we called the owner. Owner came down and got her dog. So Milo was only lost for about an hour.
What a great story.
Yeah, so I sent photos to my boss, and I was like, look what we did.
We found Milo.
Yeah, and it turns out the owner of the dog's name was also Shannon, so that was an odd coincidence. Yeah, so
Maybe it was future Shannon having to like return the dog that she lost to the person to complete the time loop that will save humanity.
sure. That might have been it. I don't know. I just felt good about doing a good thing. So.
You did, and you did a great thing, and you should feel very nice about that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's Mother's Day weekend.
Yeah.
Do you have any fun plans with your mom for tomorrow?
No, actually, so my mom is I have to work this weekend, unfortunately. Ugh. Yeah, that's part of what goes into my job is working lots of weekends. And then my sisters are actually taking her to Winter Tour tomorrow, which I'm jealous of.
What is that?
Winter Tour is a huge garden, like sort of like a smaller version of Longwood in Delaware. It's actually just down the street from Longwood Gardens. And my sister actually works in a building very close to it and gets to go to it all the time. I've never been there, and I love gardens. And so I really wanted to do this particular weekend. However, weirdly enough, I got off every single weekend this month, which almost never happens except for this weekend. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, I've already been sort of over-rewarded by the schedule god, so I'm not going to like push it. But although I had to work last weekend because 2 people called off sick.
Right, yeah.
Which really sucked. So, but yeah, my mom is going to be out. She and my dad are out there right now, so my Mother's Day contribution is watching their pets so they can do that.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Happy Mother's Day, Hal's mom.
Yeah, Ma. Happy Mother's Day.
Tomorrow, my nephew, Ryan's nephew, but soon to also be my nephew. He's basically my nephew. He's getting dedicated tomorrow at their parents' church and everything. So
that sounds weird.
Yeah, they basically like the babies get kind of Simba'd to the congregation.
Oh, so it's like a baptism, I guess?
Kind of like a baptism, but it's more like we're dedicating this child to Christ, and then the congregation kind of like commits to leading the child through his spiritual journey and all that stuff. So, I mean, we're going because I will take any excuse to see the baby whatsoever. But also, we usually go to church with his parents on Mother's Day. Mm-hmm. And, you know, because I don't speak to my mother, we're going to, you know, we'll spend pretty much the day with his mom, which we usually do, which is very nice.
That's nice.
And so, like, Ryan was like, why do we have to go to this? I'm like, because it's your nephew and we're being supportive. And he was like, we're not even religious. And I'm like, yeah, but, like, it's a thing that would mean a lot to them for us to go to. And, like, we're going to be kind of, you know, like, whatever journey he goes by, you know, if he does eventually come to the same realizations that we did, you know, maybe we can help him through that part of the journey or what have you. Like, we're just being supportive and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way to to focus on this sort of, and it doesn't seem like, I could be wrong about this, but it seems like Ryan's family isn't like hyper brainwashy in that respect. Or could I be? I'm probably wrong.
When it came to like raising Ryan, it was very brainwashy, but they're not like that with other people. Like they're not,
That's good.
They don't push it, you know, on me or anything like that. But I mean, with their kids and their family, like it's very ingrained into their daily lives, which is fine for them. Like, you know, whatever.
Whatevs.
Yeah. So Mother's Day, as some of our listeners might
It's a complicated time for Shannon.
It's a very complicated time for Shannon.
It's Mother's Complicated Day.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird one, but I do have a life update to share of an incident that occurred.
Ooh, do tell.
Yeah, so Sunday night, I'm sitting home around 9-10 o'clock at night watching Catfish and just having a good time, and my brother calls, and I'm like, this is odd. He usually doesn't call me, and so I was like, okay, well, I answered the phone, and Ian tells me that my mom has been in a car accident.
Oh no.
And he said that his car wouldn't make the journey And so he needed a ride to the hospital and didn't know who else to call.
Oh, God.
So I mean, it was late at night, and, you know, I care more about my brother than most things. So, you know, I know I wasn't like necessarily forced into this position, but I was put into a position where I went down to go get Ian and drive him to the hospital. They live in Gettysburg, and that is like an hour away from my house.
Yeah,
and
I was going to say that's a hike from Duncannon.
Yeah. So I pulled Ryan out of bed because I was like, I'm not going by myself. So we drove an hour to go get Ian, and then another 45 minutes to the hospital. And so I was talking to Ian on the way, and I was like, hey, you know, what's the plan? You know, because mom's car has been totaled. You don't have a car. Like, how are you getting home? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, cool. So I pretty much decided by the time we got to the hospital that I was going to give everyone a ride home. And so given that decision, I very quickly realized that I would have to see my mom, who I haven't spoken to in 4 years.
It's been 4 years.
It's been 4 years, dude. So it was all very like emotional for me and just awkward and things like that. So we get all the way, you know, we get to the hospital, and she's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine.
Okay.
No broken bones, not even bleeding, nothing.
That's
she had
good.
a bruise, which, yes, it is good. I don't wish her not to be good. But, like, the whole thing really was used as a opportunity to manipulate me.
Oh, I was really worried about this. Like,
Yeah.
as you were saying she was fine, I was like, was there a car accident?
So, yes. So here's what happened.
That's not usually a gray area. It's like, yeah, it's either A or B, did or did not happen.
It did happen. Should it have happened? No, not whatsoever. So Sunday night, you know, it rained a little bit on Sunday. Like, you know, it was pretty rainy. But later that night, it had stopped raining for like a while. And so I'm asking like, hey, what happened? And apparently my mom was on the way back from Tyrone, which is like on the other side of the state.
Oh, I thought this was a boyfriend or...
Oh, no.
She was on her way back from seeing Tyrone in the sleek, sultry symphony of the night.
Yeah, so she was on her way back from there. It's a couple hours drive, and I guess there was some construction. Excuse me. And there was a flagger, and so there was a pickup truck in front of her that slammed on his brakes to keep from hitting the flagger, and she slammed on her brakes and slid into the back of him.
Yeah.
Like, the airbags deployed and everything.
Oh, God.
So, like, here's the thing, though, is, like, Ryan and I had just driven an hour to get there, and I was like, the roads weren't wet. So how did you manage that? But also keep in mind that this is not my mom's first accident. It's also not my mom's first accident in this, like, kind of fashion.
She's been to lots of rodeos, it sounds like.
Yes. Well, I mean, like, you know, when I this is the hospital in Chambersburg that we were at, and that I grew up in Shippensburg, so I spent more time in doctor's offices and the ER than I did at school before the age of about 12, 13.
Jesus Christ.
And so I'm like sitting in the waiting room with Ryan, and I was like, you know, I have a lot of memories about this place. Like, dang, old times. And so
as we go on, we remember
right
all the times we laughed together.
So I get so I'm having a hard time telling this story, so, you know, just bear with me a moment. But the thing is that there was really no reason for the accident to happen. So, like, Ryan kind of floated the idea to me of, like, do you think she, like, did it on purpose? And I was like, I'm not going to say she didn't do it on purpose, And so the thing is, like, her ex-stepson was in the car with her, which is a whole extra story.
Well, that's weird.
So, like, the whole thing was they were telling me, like, oh, we're picking up, you know, this kid. He's going to spend the summer with us. And I'm like, she's not married to his dad anymore, so why are we bothering? But I digress. And Caleb, like, was absolutely fine. Like, didn't even need to go to the hospital. Fine. So Caleb's, like, sitting there. They had taken my mom in the ambulance, and like, when I walked in, she was wearing, like, a neck brace, and she was complaining about, like, pain in her shoulder and her neck. And so they took her for x-rays and a CT and all this stuff. And she comes back from the last scan, and, you know, we're all just sitting there and having an awkward moment. And she's like, what's going on? I need to know what's going on. I've been laying here too long. And I'm like, Mom, you are intimately familiar with the workings of the emergency room. Mm-hmm. It takes time, like, and they're busy. Like, you know that it's not like a McDonald's. You can't just run through and be like, one CT scan, please.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, ma'am. That'll be $22.60. Would you like to Would you like to supersize that scan to a giant CT scan?
Exactly.
Ooh, yes, please. Here's your free Happy Meal toy and your large tub of fries. Enjoy your scan.
So she's like complaining, and what she's doing is, like, she's moving her arms around, she's moving her neck around, and she's like complaining about this pain. I was like, Ma, stop moving. Like, stop flapping your arms. And she's like, oh, this is why I need you. You
to stop flapping your arms.
So she was like, to call me out on my shit. And I was like, here she goes. But the whole thing was, like, I walked in, like, when I first walked in, I didn't walk in right away because Ian went in, and I was like, I still have an opportunity to escape. And then, but my mom knew I was coming. And so I'm standing, like, at the door, and all I hear is her voice, and she goes, who's there? And I'm like, oh my God, here we go with the dramatics.
She sounds a bit like a hypochondriac.
She is. Yeah. Oh, it gets better. So I walk in,
I
was
mean
like,
worse. It gets worse.
Oh, well. And so I walk in, I'm like, hey, Mom, you know, whatever, hey. And she's like, you came. And I was like, dear Lord, you're acting like you've been diagnosed with a terminal condition or something. Like, you were in a minor car accident. Mm-hmm. Calm yourself. And I was like, yeah, I'm here. Ian needed me. So, you know, of course I came. And she's like, she had, like, her hand out for me to hold. And mm-hmm. So I, like, held her hand with my left hand. And the first thing she does is she's like, where's your ring? Bitch. In an emergency situation, I'm not leaving the house being like, oh, better put on my engagement ring.
Yeah, just in case any of these ER doctors be like, oh, hello, Mrs. Hot Bottom, Hot Body. Would you like to go to the Junior Jumble with me? Do doctors say that?
Where does this doctor come from, Hal?
Some place in the far east of Pennsylvania.
Oh, my God.
From a box social.
Yeah, well, that's a weird doctor. I think he should get his license revoked or something.
Dr. Hotbod Handsome Pants.
Okay, well, now, hold on. Now I want to meet this doctor. So the whole thing was very, like, we're sitting there, and it was so awkward. She was just, like, acting like we hadn't not seen each other in 4 years.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, and so she also was kind of, like, wheedling in, like, trying to ask questions and stuff like that. And so it was so funny. The doctor walks back in then, and she goes, oh, it's Dr. Wells. I'm like, bitch, you know this person by name?
Oh, man.
She is, like, an absolute hypochondriac. So he's like, yeah, you've got nothing going on, so you can go. And he was like, you can come back in a day or two if something if it gets worse or anything. I was like, don't tell her that. She'll absolutely come back.
So a lot of this seems like it was maybe engineered to get you back into her life.
Yeah. Well, the timing of it is not lost on me. Being a week out from Mother's Day, mm-hmm. Her birthday's in a couple weeks, and it's coming up on the 4-year anniversary of me cutting her off.
Oh man, you just missed the 4-year mark.
I know. Yeah. So, but, like, so going through the process of cutting off communication with my mom was a very difficult thing.
It's not an easy choice for any child to be like, no, we're done.
Yeah. I mean, and when I had initially cut her off, a lot of people, what I had done was I had posted on Facebook about it, which for me to do that, I'm just like, oh, this looks like I'm looking for attention or anything like that.
But you're not an attention-seeking person, so for you, that means a lot, I think.
Yeah. So, like, I put it on there, and it wasn't so much to put her on blast or anything. It was like, hey, guys, as of today, I've decided no longer to have contact with my mom. She may try to contact me by communicating through one of you or something like that. My ask is that please do not try to build a bridge between us. Don't message me about her or give her any of my contact information.
That's actually a pretty smart, reasonable thing to do, because I've had situations where people in my friend circles have cut off usually ex-husbands or ex-boyfriends. Mm-hmm. And one in particular, around this time last year, it was a new friend in my improv theater, and her ex-husband or boyfriend sent this long horrible message to literally everybody in the theater, saying all these horrible things about her, and then ending with, oh yeah, and have her get in touch with me. And I'm like, bitch, there's no way I'm ever going to tell her that you even messaged me, let alone give her your information.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's actually, I mean, she's shown up to places before, just shown up, but not while I had cut her off. And I think it was probably because she didn't know I was where I was working at the time.
Oh, she's going to show up at stand-up now, totally.
Oh, no, actually, she's never showed up to stand up. But then again, I have her blocked on all my social media. So she doesn't really know where I do stand up, even though I'm very public with where I am.
I was like, a normal person could figure it out. So.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, if she really tried, she could. But the other thing is I've had to tell coworkers, if anyone calls saying that they're my mother, don't just be like, oh, I don't know who that person is, and hang up.
If your mom ever calls me, I'm going to invent a whole thing. It's oh, we all know Shannon doesn't have any mother. She was cloned by IG-72 in the early years of the Bander universe and then deposited on this earth. Basically try to out crazy your mom, essentially, and maybe just confuse her.
I would love that. Or Shannon's home planet was in danger, and so her parents decided to send her off in an escape pod, and she landed here on Earth, and she's been living secretly among us all this time. You know
what you should do? You should create an AI Shannon to talk to your mom, kind of like they did the AI Tucker Carlson to Alex Jones.
That's hilarious. I love it.
Although AI Shannon might be moved by your mom's bullshit. So. Oh,
my God. Yeah, the AI would definitely be nicer to her than I am. I learned a lot through the experience, because one of the things that has really stressed me out over the last couple of years is the idea that I might have to see her again for some reason.
Yeah.
And so I've had a lot of stress dreams about this. It's weighed on me very heavily. I have very high anxiety about it. But now that I've been through it, the worst possible scenario has occurred. And so I guess one of my fears was I'm going to be stuck in a room with her, and it's going to completely ruin all the work I've done in the last 4 years, and I'm going to have to reestablish a relationship with her. But I got through it. I was probably nicer to her than I needed to be.
I would imagine.
But I haven't spoken to her since I dropped her off. And I texted my brother the next day. I was like, hey, how is everyone? He said, fine. Haven't heard about it since. And I haven't gotten any strange phone calls or messages or...
Is there a possibility you think that maybe she grew and changed over the last 4 years?
Oh, no, not whatsoever. I spent probably 2 hours with this woman between the hospital and the drive home, and the woman has not changed.
Yeah, that does not surprise me whatsoever.
No, she's just as outrageous as she was the last time I saw her. It was wild. They were sitting in my back seat, and I'm listening in, and they're telling the same jokes from that they've been telling for the last 15 years. I mean, it was pretty absurd, the whole situation. I was like, it feels very I'm trying to think of the word. But like the idea of like the last 4 years have kept me so totally separate from it. And it was like being shoved back to 7 years ago. It was it was weird. It was weird.
It's funny you said they have the same jokes because I've encountered a lot of people who get stuck in just telling the same jokes from a certain era over and over and over again. Like the most obvious example is my dad still says who let the dogs out a lot of the time. But also like I had a coworker when I worked at the track like 17 years ago at this point, who like I showed my student films up there, and like one of my student films, since we're talking Mother's Day, my mom was an actress in it where she played a drunk, abusive mother that like rolled over on a bed full of beer bottles. It was your average student film flair. It was not that great. I was 20 years old. And for whatever reason, like the guy zeroed in on the fact that there was an unusual amount of Beck's Dark on the bed, and he made that joke, and everybody thought that was really funny. And he proceeded to make the same Beck's Dark joke I don't talk to this person at all because like I haven't seen him in 12 years. I don't really care that much. I don't care if that sounds mean, but he's a non-factor in my life. And occasionally he'll just text me and be like, "Hey, you enjoying some Beck's Dark?" And I'm like, this was a joke 15 years ago. There's no context for this. I'm not laughing at this.
Right. And that was exactly what had happened. Like back when I was, oh my God, 14, maybe 13, 14, we were playing like Dungeons and Dragons as a family. Like we used to play Dungeons and Dragons is fun, but not with my family.
Your mom as the DM would be...
Oh, no, it was her ex-husband as the DM.
Disaster master.
Oh, my God. And so at some point during the campaign, we encountered a werebear.
Werewolf bear?
A werewolf bear,
yeah.
Yeah. And so...
Unbetty.
Yeah. Somehow, and I don't remember the whole conversation, but somebody was like, oh, shit, a werebear. And... like it became a thing. And so I'm like, it's been like over 10 years since that conversation happened. And they're sitting in the back seat saying like, remember the werebear thing? And I'm like, are we still telling that joke? Like, are we still talking about that? Like, that was so long ago.
I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but I would imagine that if people get stuck on the same jokes from like a long time, there's probably a complicated reason behind it. Like maybe that's about when your development stops, but also like there's probably some nostalgia involved in that too. Like with Who Let the Dogs Out, that was when we still laughed at my dad's jokes because we didn't really have that much of a frame of reference elsewhere.
Yeah.
The friend of mine, like or the person I worked with at the track, like he doesn't really do very much anymore. He's kind of a stay-at-home dad, and that was kind of like the last time that he interacted with adults. So maybe that's something to do with it.
Yeah, I don't know. So how it all ended was, we're on our way back to their house, and Ian is like, you can just drop us off at the Sheets. Like it was like 2 blocks away from their house.
Maybe they live at the Sheets.
No, I've seen the house, and Ian, when I got there, he was like, I didn't think you'd want to come in. I was like, no, of course I don't want to come in. So like we get to the Sheets, I run in, I get a cup of coffee, I run to the bathroom, I come out, reconnect with Ryan, and Ian's there, and I'm like looking around, I was like, where's Mom? And he was like, the bathroom, and I was like, oh, okay, bye. So I left without.
Get out.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was just a very kind of surreal experience. But the thing is, like I said, I've been so stressed out about the idea of having to interact with her that now that it's happened, like it's like a big weight's been taken off my shoulders.
Well, that's good.
And I realized that I don't have to live in fear of that situation anymore because now I've lived through it.
Yeah, you dipped your toes in the water, and it sucked, but it wasn't lethal.
Yeah. And so, and it also kind of validated my feelings once more that, I'm doing the right thing for me and that I'm in a much better place and have a really great support system.
Yeah.
my mom, as we were sitting in the hospital, she was trying to guilt me into being her power of attorney.
Oh, no.
She
Fuck
was
no.
like-
Oh, fuck no. Fuck no. Fuck no.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck no.
Yeah. Well, the thing was, she was like, well, my will or something still has her ex-husband as like her power of attorney or whatever. And she
Sounds
was
like a you problem, lady.
Well, and she was like, oh, your grandfather, he had me and my brother as his POAs, and I want to do the same. I want both of you guys to be making decisions if something happens to me. And I'm like, so I was thinking about it, and here's the thing is, like, Ian, this whole experience was like, he was an absolute mess. He was crying, he was upset, and I was like, Ian, Mom's done this 100 times. Like 100 times. Like, she's been in car accidents. She's one time she went to the hospital because now she claims that she was having a panic attack and a cop tackled her or something. I don't think that's true. But I mean, she's been to the hospital more times than the average bear. And so I'm like, Ian, she's conscious. There's no broken bones. If there were broken bones, she'd be in way more pain. There's no bleeding. There's no, like, she is fine. And you are still an absolute wreck. So, like, for a moment when she was, like, talking about this POA thing, I was thinking to myself, like, oh, shit, if Ian were in a situation where he had to make a decision for my mother and she was incapacitated, that would be a absolute shit show.
Yeah.
So at first I was like, yeah, just tell me when the lawyer appointment is, because what it could be would be like a springing power of attorney. I'd only have to make decisions if she were incapable of making decisions for herself.
Yeah.
But then I talked to my dad about it, and he was like, you are an insane person. Do not do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
So
You get caught up in so much other stuff too. Like you said, your mom's a hoarder, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Imagine being power of attorney and having to deal with all of that stuff
God.
at some point. If she's incapacitated, passes away, or has to go to assisted living, you're responsible for taking care of all that shit.
Oh my gosh. No, I remember the last time I walked into their house, I couldn't even stand to be in there. It smelled so bad. I was talking to my therapist recently about what it was like growing up, and it would get to a point where, like, the dishes, both sinks would be filled. They'd be all over the counter space. They'd be on the dining room table. It would be like sky high of dishes.
Well, first off, I'm impressed that she had that many dishes.
Oh, well, that's because she never washed them. If you don't wash the
bought
dishes, you
new
need more
dishes.
dishes. And she would let the whole house get like that, like trash everywhere. There were times where we didn't have clean clothes to wear. I mean, it was a bad situation, and she would let it pile up like that. And then one day she would just explode, and she would be like, you kids, you make my house this way, and we're all going to fix this. So all of a sudden we'd all be deep cleaning the entire house, which normally, if you were a normal family who like cleaned regularly, it wouldn't be that bad. But it would be like it would be like cleaning the house of a person who had died and not been found for like a week.
We had, like, obviously that was never my experience growing up, but like in our house we had similar sort of things, like being somebody raising 3 children, you do let a lot of things go around the house sometimes because there's just so much shit to do and so much mental energy like expended to make sure your 3 children don't kill themselves, kill each other, or get into some sort of trouble. So like we had a pretty messy house in a lot of ways growing up, and then we would go on these cleaning spurts, and like that's kind of how I operate in my house still, is that like I mean, not to the level of your mom, but like I'll let dishes like fill up maybe one side of the sink, and then like, okay, we need to just do dishes, and it'll take like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very distinct difference. And the whole thing was that it would be from like 0 to 100, and then like she'd be like, okay, now we're gonna keep this house this way, but then she wouldn't like enforce any kind of rules, wouldn't enforce any kind of regular cleaning. So, yeah, I mean, the cycle would just start all over again. And it got to the point where I kind of associated mess with like my character, because she would be like, you guys don't love me because you don't keep this place clean.
Oh,
And
yeah. This sounds a little familiar.
You're talking to like 6 or 7-year-olds that need someone to kind of be like, okay, now we have to clean up. You know, like, you can't expect a 6 or 7-year-old to take the initiative to clean everything.
This is a weird, like, sort of byproduct too that I've noticed a ton with specifically like the boomer generation, but they probably got it from their parents and so on and so forth. Is like associating any sort of character flaw as a severe moral failing. Like, I had a discussion with one of my coworkers a couple of like last week. That kind of made me a little bit mad because we were talking about Judy Garland, and Judy Garland is somebody that's near and dear to my heart. Like, she was a very sweet person, horribly abused by the studio system, but was still like a well-documented, kind and nice person to those that were like down in need, specifically the gays, and that's why she's such a popular figure among the LGBTQ community. And this coworker at work was just kind of like, oh, Judy Garland was no saint. And I'm like, well, do you care to elaborate on that a little bit? Oh, she was addicted to drugs. And I'm like, she was force addicted to barbiturates when she was a child, being forced to dance 13 hours a day. And my exact words were like, this is not a moral failing. Like, and that's it's endemic of a bigger problem with the psychology of some of these people is like drug and alcohol use, for instance, rather than being sympathetic to people who have real conditions or real pain, it's a moral failing. So being fat is a moral failing. Being messy means you don't love your mom. So, and I think that that's like something that needs to be deconditioned from us in general, is like, sometimes you just don't have the mental or physical energy to clean, and it doesn't mean that you hate your mother over it. You hate your mother for different reasons. But
right. Well, that was the whole thing, is that like she would always act like if anything went wrong, it was done personally. It was like it was an affront to her specifically.
Oh, man.
So like if we,
I feel that so bad.
Like if we made a mistake, if there was anything where we kind of fell short, like she was like, you've done this to me, is what the whole feeling would be like. And so, I mean, it's taken a lot of time to work through those feelings, and as I'm beginning to realize, like, I was talking to our premarital counselor, and you know, Ryan and I have run into, you know, two people are living together, so things come up, and so it's very difficult because when Ryan will say, hey, I noticed you didn't clean this up, would you mind taking care of that? He's not intending anything by it. He's just saying like, hey, look, this is a mess and it needs to be cleaned up. But because of my trauma, I'm like, I want to cry because I'm just like, that means I'm a terrible person. He thinks that I'm doing this on purpose and all of this stuff, which isn't true. And so like our premarital counselor was like, it sounds like you have your mom's voice in your head. And I'm like, yeah, I do.
Actually, I have a similar thing with Lauren, because Lauren actually enjoys cleaning. Like, she says it's something that calms her.
Ryan loves to clean.
She's worked in hotel hospitality most of her life, so it's just something she likes doing. Like when she was dog sitting for me when we went to a funeral in December, she just cleaned my house and it looked really nice. That brings up intense feelings of guilt for me, not just because of like childhood messiness and cleaning, but also the previous relationship. If I left like a bag, an empty cookie bag anywhere like in the house, like in the corner of the basement, I would get screamed at, and there would be like a text sent to me that would be like 20 text messages long about how like that shows I don't respect her, that I left a piece of garbage in the house. So like I have all these very complicated feelings for my significant other doing anything like that for me. And what it's sort of weirdly gotten me to do is just like keep my house in better shape, because I don't want Lauren to do. And we've had this discussion a lot of times. Like I've told her exactly what the hangups are, exactly like how I've been scarred a bit from like the previous relationship in that respect. And she's like, man, you got to deprogram from that. I'm not going to hate you just because I clean up some stuff sometimes. So it's a work in progress, but definitely like you, it's a lot of mental hangups about staying tidy.
Yeah. I mean, it's, and there's a lot of different feelings with it too, is like when my apartment is more messy than what I would like, I'll think to myself like, you're just as bad as your mother, you can't keep your house clean, and like you are incapable of being a proper adult. And like it's all these like what's the word for it again? I can't think.
Insecurities,
but like
baggage. I don't know.
Intrusive thoughts. That's what it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say no. Now I understand perfectly.
Yeah. So it's really tough. So I don't want the whole thing to be doom and gloom, but it is a difficult time. Mother's Day for me, and there are a lot of people in the world who are estranged from their mothers, and so it is a hard time. And I don't know if it will ever not be a difficult thing.
Maybe when you're a mother, like that could be different then. Like
maybe, but then I always have these, like even thinking about when I'm a mother, like, oh gosh, what if I'm just like my mother? And I have like concerns like that I won't know what to do because I'll know what I don't want to do.
When you say that, it makes me think of like the Arrested Development joke where Lucille Bluth is like, nobody wrote a book on how to raise children. And the narrator's like, actually, an Amazon search reveals 13,000 books on how to raise children.
Exactly. Well, for me, it's like, for example, with all of her delusions and like the fantasies that she wove into our childhood, like I know that imaginative play is very important for a child's development.
Oh, yeah.
But I won't know like how much is too much and like how to sufficiently like not stunt their creativity, but also like make sure that they don't fall into the same kind of trauma that I had.
See, I think that it'll be different for you for several reasons. And I think like because I share a lot of the same bad coping mechanisms my parents had, obviously, because that's just kind of the way things go. But like there's been a change in the way you talk about mental health in the last maybe like 15-ish years, I think at least. And like you and I both go to therapy. We're both on anxiety medication. And like the intrusive thoughts were something that were incredibly pervasive with me for the longest time. In fact, when you said your mom treated it like you're doing this to me any single time, that was exactly my mindset. Like anytime I'd be left out of something or something didn't go my way or somebody like did something to hurt me or something, it would be like they're doing this deliberately just to hurt me. And those intrusive thoughts have mostly been kept at bay by like managing it with Zoloft and like talking to my therapist about it. And I think that like, did your mom go through any sort of counseling or mental health stuff?
So yes, but also so here's the thing. My mom is a master manipulator.
It sounds like it. I mean, she maybe manufactured a car accident to get you back. Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't. The thing is that we can't rule it out.
Yeah.
And just additionally, like there are so many things about my childhood that I will never get a straight answer on because I don't know if she recognizes, like how much she recognizes, if she realizes that the things that she told lies about are lies. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult for me to know, like through her experience with mental health, like I know she's been medicated before and I know that she has seen therapists before. But the thing is, like, do the therapists recognize what what exactly her mental health is like and the impact that she has on other people?
Yeah. Well, the whole parental lying thing is like a huge like deal, like to a completely, like this is completely different than your mom lying to you. Mm-hmm. But like these are a lot of hangups I have with my dad actually, is that like when you're a kid, you basically take your parents like as the gospel truth because you trust them and they're the ones raising you. And my dad, over the course of our childhood and like early adulthood, told us a lot of ham dingers that he heard on like Rush Limbaugh and Fox News and presented as actual like absolute truth. And the first time, like, do you remember who Terry Schiavo was by any chance? So this was like a big Fox News epidemic thing in 2005, I want to say. Enough so they did a South Park episode about it too. But what had happened was there was this woman who was like legally brain dead, living off of feeding tubes, and had been in this like vegetative condition for years. And her husband had decided to remove her feeding tube because like she wasn't alive really. There was no life in her whatsoever. And for whatever reason, Fox News jumped on this as a like, you gotta save Terry Schiavo's life sort of thing. where like they spread all of these like lies about her condition. There were people like trying to burst through hospital security to give Terry Schiavo water to keep her alive once they took her feeding tube out. And people were like, this was legitimate pandemonium over Terry Schiavo. Thank God you don't remember this. But one of the lies my dad repeated a lot was that her husband had actually like been responsible for putting her in this vegetative state. And I repeated this in a college class I was taking at the time, and I was eviscerated by the class over it. And then I found out like that wasn't true. And then that was sort of like the first block. And I'm realizing like all of these weird things my dad has told me politically were not true whatsoever. He still believes that Nixon got in trouble because he stood up for his friends, whatever the fuck that means. Which is not true whatsoever, people. And like, it eroded a lot of severe trust in specifically my dad, but I guess both of my parents a little bit, that like all these lies, which in a similar fashion, he does not believe to be lies, but are demonstrably lies. And that's partly why I think I take him to task a little bit more, because my sisters were a little smarter and were like, yeah, this is kind of bullshit earlier, but I held on to it a lot longer. And like, I'm still bitter about how these lies shaped my life and shaped other people's perceptions of me and stunted my own growth.
Yeah, well, and that's one of my biggest grievances with my mom, is that she used Ian and I as pawns for her manipulation.
Yeah.
Our entire lives.
Well, you lived in the sanctuary, right?
The castle.
The castle, okay.
Yeah. So, like, for example, like this accident, you know, she used Ian as a pawn to get me to come to the hospital because somebody had to say, call Shannon.
It's one-dimensional chess at this point.
Right. And then, I mean, growing up, she would also, so for example, I was talking to my therapist about this recently, where Ian and I were both placed in special ed classes growing up. And it wasn't until about halfway through middle school, I want to say, when my dad came back, that I was taken out of special ed classes because everybody was like, Shannon doesn't need to be in special ed classes. She doesn't have a learning disability.
I was going to say, like, I mean, learning disabilities are not necessarily evident to everybody, but it seems to me like you're a fairly with it person on everything. So. Right.
You know, there are things that, you know, I think the reason why I was it's complicated because the thing is, like, I don't even know. I don't know what she convinced them was going on. And it was really easy, too, for her. Like, one of the reasons we moved around so much was so that she could put us in these special education classes, and then we'd move pretty soon, like usually within a year or two. So then the teachers wouldn't catch on that we didn't actually have learning disabilities, and then we would move on to the next school.
I've said this before, but it's amazing you're as well adjusted as you are, despite all this.
Oh, yeah. Well, and so I was talking to my therapist about this, and she was like, well, why would she do that? Well, I just found out recently that if you have a child in special ed classes, you can get SSI from the government.
Because the thought was just crossing my mind too. Like, I was thinking about Forrest Gump's mom who had to put out to get her kid out of special ed. So like, what goal does it possibly keep to have your children in special ed? Oh, more SSI.
Yeah. And this is a pattern. Like, she has always used us as a meal ticket. First of all, like, she trapped my dad by having me. Then later on, so, you know, just like through... She had a really good job at one point, but then she got put on disability. My mom's not disabled. She's perfectly capable of working just as much as anybody else. She does not have a disability. So Ian was telling me last week when I was at the hospital, he was like, yeah, mom made too much money and now she has to pay back Social Security and disability for the last 12 years.
Oh my fucking God. And 12 years?
I was like, Ian, that doesn't make any fucking sense. So I'll tell you what happened. Or what is most likely what happened is somebody caught wise and figured out my mom's not disabled.
Yeah.
And therefore, she's got to pay back all that money from the last 12 years. Don't fraud the fucking government.
No, do not defraud the government.
So I'd like to take a little bit of credit for that. I'm thinking maybe they found the podcast.
Yay. Depression vacation, ruining lives that deserve to be ruined.
But I mean, I'm just telling. So now that's the thing is like we just found out that she has to pay back money to the tune of like $30,000 to the government, and just so happens to have just gotten into a car accident.
Ah. Into a truck too.
Mm-hmm.
So well-insured commercial business. Although if she hit the truck, like if she rear-ended them, she's usually like, from what my dad has told me, being a traffic attorney maven, if you rear-end somebody,
it's always your fault.
It's almost like very, very, very few exceptions. It's always your fault.
Right, but she's trying to, I guarantee you this is what's going to happen because of the story that it is that there was a flagger, which caused the truck in front of her to slam on his brakes, which caused her to slam on her brakes. So it very well could come down to her trying to blame the fact that there was construction going on.
Well, they'll find that out pretty quickly because the one, like, I've only gotten in one major car accident my entire life, and that was when I was driving my parents' old van. I was home from, like, California, and the brakes failed when I was going through a red light, which was horrifying. Like, my mind went to, like, everything. I'm like, okay, brake. Okay, you can't do this. Let's see if we can get into the guardrail. And this was all, like, in the period of, like, 4 seconds. This went through my brain. Looked to my right. Oh, there's a car on my right. Can't go to the guardrail. What do? Emergency brake, quick. And I pulled the emergency brake, and the rod just broke off in my hand. And so my last second was like, okay, I guess we're doing this. And then I crashed, like, at 35 miles an hour into the car in front of me. And it was pretty jarring. Like, getting into an accident, I was definitely, like, a little shaky the next couple of days because it, like, really does stuff. And when the police came and took my report and everything, they were like, oh, yeah, I can tell that you really, your brakes failed. Because so many people will say their brakes failed all the time, and then you'll see skid marks all over the place to see it, to, like, prove that, no, your brakes worked fine. So if that really happened with your mom, there will be skid marks, as opposed to if she tried to purposely go into the car, there will be no skid marks whatsoever.
Well, I mean, for me, so first of all, I'm going to kind of give a post disclaimer that, I don't know how this all works. And
you just know your mom.
Maybe it doesn't. I do know my mom. And, I'm just saying that, like, regardless of whether or not it's, possible to get away with it or do what she's trying to do, it's what she would do. So, I mean, it's really just the whole thing is, well, and also, weirdly enough, my mom, so she gets settlements because my grandfather had mesothelioma. So she used that to get money.
Okay.
She was interviewed over the course of the pandemic because of vaccines, and she claims that my grandmother died of diverticulitis because she got the flu vaccine. And so, like, if you Google, like, Christina Grimm vaccine or something like that, you'll see pictures of my mom in various interviews with, like, Newsweek and stuff like that.
Not interested in ever giving any mental energy to this.
But the whole thing is, like, she shows a pattern of manipulating. She's a con artist.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's frustrating that she goes to these lengths when she could just not.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this has all been therapeutic to you so that, like, next Mother's Day you can move on to the next thing that she did.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, how much time do we have left?
We have like 10-ish minutes.
Okay. Well, we can move on to brighter things and happier things that have to do with mothers.
I did want to say, like 50 minutes ago, I wanted to be like, because I know we have very different mother situations, and my mom had, like, a lot of her baggage when we were growing up too, but she was actually a pretty wonderful mom. Like, she took us out to museums a lot. She was very, we were talking about imaginative play, and she was and my dad was actually very good at this too. Both of them were excellent when we were younger at imaginative play and making up stories and just going on, like, outdoor fantasy sort of things, which were a lot of fun. And, like, for all the gripes I have about my parents, which are legitimate, they were really wonderful parents. And so for Mother's Day, I'm glad that, like, my mom really enjoys getting stuff done for Mother's Day, and we like doing it for her because she appreciated it so much. And that's kind of why I'm sad I can't go to the garden tomorrow. But yeah, so I'll spend a minute just saying how nice, some nice Mother's Day stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I'll take this opportunity to say that I know a lot of really fantastic mothers, and just want to shout out to everyone who's listening, who's a mother or acts in a motherly capacity to anyone, and just say that any good that you put into the world as a mother is really. I don't know what else to say. I really just appreciate people who make efforts and who are conscious about how their actions impact others, and how important it is to be the right kind of parent. Like I when I was at the event this morning, there was a lemonade stand with two young girls, early teens, who started their own business, and their mother was there with them, supporting them. And just like I got a chance to talk to their mom, and she was just so proud of them and just talking about their amazing story. And I just told her, I said, listen, I don't have a very good relationship with my mother. And I just want you to know that, you know, I'm grateful that they have a mother like you to be there and supportive of them.
That's very sweet. And, you know, I remember, I think my ex said this at one point, that a lot of times as a parent, you try to right the wrongs about how you were raised a lot as parents. And like, for all her faults of like how she treated me, she was a fantastic mom. Like there was lots of imaginative play is a word that keeps coming back in mind. There was lots of good things, and there's a lot of good being done with her and her children because her kids were fantastic. So it's nice to and she, like I said, she always used to say, it's like, you kind of, you become a therapist to right the wrongs that you see in the world, and you become a parent to do the same thing. And I'm like, that makes sense. So like, I think your perspective on this will change a lot too, as you become a parent later in life too. And all of that things. And you know, I'm sure Brian is going to be a fantastic granddad as well. Yeah. And then your mom can just
not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. She can just be a person someplace else with your brother, maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Ryan's parents will be awesome grandparents too. So.
Oh my gosh, and Ryan's mom is just like the light of my life. I love her so much. And like her presence in my life over the last couple of years. And just like her willingness to embrace me and bring me into the family has just been like mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's my sister's husband's kind of been that way too, because like he talks with his dad like on the regular, but his dad is like far away, like he lives in Texas, and he's been sort of like far away for most of Steve's adult life. So like my parents kind of did the same with him, like took him in, everything. And like similarly, I was just thinking about, for most of my life, I really only had one set of grandparents, because my dad's parents died when I was like 6 and 8, I want to say. It might have been even younger. But like I don't remember much about his mom at all. And his dad was kind of a frumpy, grumpy person. But then my mom's parents were fantastic. Like, and they were the grandparents we would always go to stay with for trips and things like that. And my mom's mom had her own set of issues too. Like it was so funny because she was literally a fantastic person, but she had a lot of anxiety and a lot of like things, and was raising 8 kids as well on her own. So like she had her own tantrums that she threw all the time and her own mental instabilities. But and they were pretty significant. Like us kids got caught in a lot of like screaming arguments with her and like lots of people. But the funny thing was, she was such a fantastic person on the other side of things that like it completely counteracted the also major other problems she had on the other side. And then my grandpa on that side was just like the sweetest, like laid back person. Like you almost could never get him angry about anything. So yeah, they were sweet, good grandparents to have.
Yeah.
The thing I always remember my mom told me about my grandma too, which was very important, which I took to heart in a lot of my life, is that she was always very engaged with people and always very interested. Like you can always tell when you're talking with somebody and they're not really listening. They're kind of like just looking for their chance to talk, or maybe just not reacting to the right thing. Like there are clear ways to tell that somebody's not paying attention to what you're saying. And my grandmother was somebody who always like harped in on the right things and was like, you could tell that she was like processing and all that.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, in fact, her birthday is was around this time too. It was like late April. So
Yeah.
So we used to do Mother's Day and grandma's birthday at the same time.
That's nice.
Yeah, there's nice parent things too.
Yeah.
You didn't just mess us up, you also raised us.
Sometimes.
Well, I mean, maybe not your mom, but
Sometimes they do some good out there. Sometimes they're good parents, and there are a lot of really great moms out there.
yeah. In fact, I don't know if you've watched the Tupac's the Tupac and his mother documentary that's on Hulu right now.
No.
There's a fantastic documentary series specifically about Tupac Shakur's like relationship with his mother. I had known from like just Tupac anecdotes in the 90s that his mom like gave birth to him in prison and all these things. But I didn't know like the actual story was that she was a Black Panther and she was thrown in there for like civil disobedience sort of things. So that's why Tupac was born in prison. And he had a very like close but complicated relationship with his mother. And one of the interviewees in the documentary said something that I've taken to heart. It's like, because his mother passed away a couple of years ago, to like obviously long after he was shot to death. Mm-hmm. And she said that she wanted the whole story told. That means warts and all. And I always think about that like now with a relationship to a lot of other people too. Like there's a lot of good and bad in everybody's relationship with people. Like it's very rare that somebody is completely bad on things, and there's good things to take away from some relationship. Again, like it doesn't sound like that might be the way with your mom particularly, but like that's kind of how I feel about my relationship with my parents. It's like, yeah, there's a ton of warts, but there's tons of good things too. So like maybe try to focus more on the good things and like not so much on the warts, although my dad makes it almost impossible because he's so convinced his bullshit is right, he will just bring it up out of nowhere. And I've straight up told him, like, okay, Dad, like, you know, we can have a simulacrum here, but if you bring up bullshit, I'm going to call you out on it. And so he brings up bullshit, and then fights ensue.
Yeah, we do our best with our parents.
Yeah, and our kids will do, or your kids will do their best with you. So.
Oh, I hope so.
So you have anything fun coming up in the next week?
On the 20th, so next Saturday, I have the Castle Rig show.
Woo.
I'll post about that.
Oh, how was the roast battle, by the way?
Roast battle was fun. I got knocked out in the second round, which was sad. But,
you won a round, so.
I did, and I did really well in the second round, but I had a joke that kind of fell flat. But yeah, as always, it was a blast. Jeff Roser won. He's won. This would be the second time he's won.
Yeah, I saw him at an open mic a couple of weeks ago because they said that he had won. He was the reigning roast battle champion.
Well, no, John Montag won the one before this one.
Oh, okay.
So
I never see John Montag anymore.
It was Dom, Jeff, John, Jeff.
Oh, so there's only been 4 roast battles.
Yeah.
So it's not like Shit in a Hat where it's like every month. It's like quarterly.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll just get at it again next time. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to Mike about doing Shit in a Hat for, I think, June. Because
Cool.
that's something, like, I'm not interested really in doing the roast battle, but I'd like to get... Shit in a Hat was fun the one time I did it.
Yeah.
So, and it's been about a year, so I think it's maybe time to, like, get back into the mix with that in general. But
Yeah, absolutely. And Ryan and I, we were cast in The Addams Family. We are ancestors, so we're in the ensemble.
That's cool.
But yeah, it's going to be a really fun show. We're excited.
Ensemble is a good place to be. Like, not everybody can always be, like, the lead in everything. So,
Yeah.
but
No,
ensemble, you
it's
get to
good.
have fun.
Yeah, and it's a good cast, and I'm looking forward to it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, this has been a very heavy episode of Depression Vacation.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
No, never apologize.
Blame my mother.
Never apologize. Well, maybe if you're Shannon's mother, you can apologize. But
Yeah, apologize.
apologize, man, or woman, or person, whatever you call a person.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but so anyway, it's been a lot of fun. We've
Yeah.
digressed on a lot of topics. Happy Mother's Day to all the wonderful
Yes.
mothers out there.
Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah, and just happy day too to all the women out there who've chosen not to be mothers, because that's a very valid decision as well.
Yeah.
And like, just be a person and be a
Yeah.
good person.
Yeah.
So this has been Hal,
This has been Shannon.
and this has been Depression Vacation, and hopefully we'll see you next week.